white nigga, broke nigga, poor nigga, real nigga, rich nigga, poor nigga, Kobe nigga, Kunta nigga, still nigga. For real, how many times we gonna say nigga? Nigga. I like that one. Data matters. This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks. I wanted to have a discussion today on Jay-Z's new album, on Black Wealth, on a number of issues that I see connecting the two. As for those people that don't know, I'm an attorney here in Los Angeles. I was nominated for an Emmy on a documentary called Freeway Crack in the System that was about crack cocaine, Freeway Rick Ross, the lawsuit that we had against Rick Ross. I was one of the attorneys on that case for basically taking the name and image of Rick Ross, and more importantly, the Iran-Contra and how it affected like Black America. One of the things I've been able to do over the last year is really getting involved with the context and concepts around Black wealth at a high level. I've been able to interview billionaire Byron Allen, shout out to him. I've been able to interview Sandy Darity, one of the leading intergenerational economists in the world. I've been able to interview Thomas Shapiro, the author of Black Wealth, White Wealth, and even interview Meta World Peace about the league money that's out there and how that all works in terms of dating and Black life and everything else. But today what I wanted to talk about was Jay-Z and his 444 album, and kind of give you my view, which is the 4 reasons that 444 fails Black America and fails to explain Black wealth, along with a general context around Jay-Z and how I see him as a 50-year-old, basically high school dropout that's kind of leading our general discussion around wealth, economics, and Blackness in all the wrong ways. None of the data supports what he's saying. And in so many instances, what I'm seeing is that people want to find a middle ground. Isn't it good that he's open to discussion? We've been having this discussion. Go check my work. I did an article kind of to lay this framework. We got to make sure that we all on the same page in terms of understanding. I'm not here to generalize. I'm gonna talk data from the Federal Reserve, from the Census Bureau, from Credit Suisse, so we all have an understanding about the state of Black wealth before we get into the real discussion that kind of digs at the core foundational elements that make up Jay-Z. So let's start off with an understanding that the middle Black family in this country, when you take out the family cards, worth $1,700. $1,700, that's it. And that's according to Edward Wolf, NYU professor. Essentially, when you take out the family car, the couch, depreciating assets that never should have been counted, that middle family, there's 14 million Black homes, 40 million Blacks live in those 14 million homes. That middle family is worth $1,700. Now, on top of that, if you really looked at debt loads, and it's actually an ironic statement for Jay-Z to talk about like credit, because credit hasn't been kind to Black America. We've had a history of predatory loans, taking up lands, and for this man to sit up and talk about, strip clubs and then credit in this story of OJ song, it's just inaccurate. And so like inaccurate in terms of what it's done for us. When you look at Black America, and I'm gonna pull up a chart, let's talk specifics. This was done by Matt Brunig from demos.org. Friend of mine will be doing a piece later this year when the new data comes out. They release this data from the Federal Reserve every 3 years. They'll be releasing the new data this year, and I think it's going to be worse. What this chart shows is that the bottom half of Black America isn't worth $1. So we got 14 million homes, 7 million ain't worth $1 when you really add in like debts. That's because of student loans, credit cards, all the things that make it look like we just have the same opportunity as white people, but in reality we don't. We have to understand, let's set a framework again, that there's $94 trillion in household worth, and white people have 90% of it. Our race as a whole, 14 million homes, has 2.6% of the national personal wealth. Most of that is in baby boomer hands, older Black Americans. Working age Black families largely are living on credit and hope. And Jay-Z is part of that hope, and it's a problem. That's the purpose of this video, to lay out the problem, and also to lay out how we deal with the reality of digesting that problem in context of our life and move forward. And so, what's a trip is I kind of want to give you guys something to like get a grasp on all the data, then we'll come back, have this discussion, and everything else. This is an animated video I did on Black Wealth. Check this out. It'll be less than 90 seconds, and then we'll get into it. Tone Talks brings to you the racial wealth gap in America, explained in 60 seconds. In America, there are 190 million whites, living in just about 82 million homes, while there are 40 million blacks, living in just over 14 million homes. To truly understand the racial wealth gap, you must look past the income of these families and evaluate household worth. According to demos.org, in total, white American households own 90% of the national wealth. In contrast, black Americans altogether own less than 2.6% of the national wealth, with most of this small sliver being in the hands of black baby boomer retirees. Black working age families are largely invisible nationally in terms of wealth. To give a clearer lens, the bottom 50% of American households control only 1% of the national wealth. And of the total 14 million black households, likely over 10 million black families fall into this bottom group that owns nearly no wealth. The racial wealth gap is real and it's growing. While 10%, or about 8 million white homes, are worth $1.4 million or more, according to Slate.com, when you deduct the family car, 50% of African American homes, or over 7 million black families, are worth no more than $1,700. Subscribe to learn more at tonetalks.org. So I'm giving you the 4 reasons that Jay-Z and 444 fail black America and fail on explaining black wealth. First is Jay-Z doesn't understand race and wealth. The second is that Jay-Z is writing basically a Black Lives Matter movement to sell albums and fails on Black Lives Matter issues over the course of his career. And the third is Jay-Z isn't really all that authentic when it comes to like dope sales. And I learned a lot doing my documentary. I may cut in a section where Freeway Rick even talks about like Jay-Z being basically inauthentic, and if you're going to be somebody who's a high school dropout, at least be authentic about the dope. The last thing, of course, is that Jay-Z represents what I call the Decadent Veil, which is a larger like kind of contextual covering of all of black struggle by giving a few black celebrities extremely high amounts of advantage. So in the end, what I'm kind of saying is you're not still black when you get to be a multiple millionaire and have the fantastical life of black celebrity. You just kind of become black whenever it's like beneficial to you. And that's what we're seeing right here, to me. Like in Jay-Z, essentially, in this story of OJ's song, goes into this kind of conceptual analysis around Dumbo. That's a part of New York. And he says, I could have bought a place in Dumbo before it was Dumbo for like $2 million. That same building is worth $25 million. Guess how I'm feeling? Dumbo. The problem with it, though, is that Jay-Z doesn't understand Dumbo or New York. And more importantly, what's blatantly clear through this album is Jay-Z doesn't understand blackness, nor do the people that are listening much. Yeah, I'll say that. And so, like, what you see is that there's a history of slavery and Jim Crow, and we don't really understand Jim Crow meant you don't take part in any of the privileges of being an American despite having American citizenship. You don't get to see appreciation. You don't get to see free access. You don't get these things. But Jay-Z's song kind of like puts that onus back on black America by saying that we made a bad decision. The larger context also is, I just showed you in an animated video that there's 14 million black homes, and by my estimate, roughly speaking, there might be 175,000 black homes with $1 million, single $1 million worth of full assets when you add everything, debts and everything. And they're all old. So the amount of black families out there that could take $2 million and invest it in the property in the 70s, it's really small. But I think that one of the things that we've done is we created a coping mechanism that somehow our choices are the reason our failures exist. And it's wrong. There's a new book that came out. Check it out, Color of Law. And what kind of I wanted to do is, there's an article I want you guys to check out. I'm pulling it up now. Jay-Z gets his historic Dumbo real estate values wrong on new album. And what the author says in that is in 1979, David Willentis, who's a real estate investor, paid $12 million for 2 million square feet of Dumbo late last year. Jared Kushner and other firms paid a combined $345 million for Dumbo's 85 J Street, an undeveloped parking lot. So what you see is there was great appreciation, but you also got to take into context that there's a lasting history of redlining in New York. And this is the problem with both getting your history from a rap song and allowing a rapper like Jay-Z to teach it. Because if you take that part out, when you do that lyric, you have a whole generation of people who you presume know that they black, but you're teaching them that they're not black. That somehow there was a decision made with money that we didn't have to not buy this property. I'm pulling up a second article, and what it says is how one racist Depression-era policy still shapes New York real estate. Understand that there was heavy redlining throughout New York that kept blacks out of the real estate market. That is the consequence of blackness in this country. Access shut off. And so, like, this article says, if you were African American, simply getting a mortgage in your New York City neighborhood was pretty much out of the question. As a result, many owners in these areas stopped investing in their properties. The neighborhoods fell into decline. This affected huge swaths of New York and Brooklyn, most of North Brooklyn, as well as Cobble Hill, Gowanus, Sunset Park, and Dumbo. And so, like, my problem is that what we're doing is we're allowing this man to talk about blackness without talking about blackness. You know, it's not just about being black today. It's about being historically black in a country that has continuously used disenfranchisement tools to shut us out. Go check out my interview with Byron Allen and follow his lawsuits against Comcast and the like for shutting us out of cable. You know, this is real, and I have a problem with this do-for-self conservative talking points that Jay-Z has, because it's wrong. You know, in so many instances, because we don't understand politics as a race, what's happening is we're tricked by pony tricks. This talking point that Jay-Z is perpetuating throughout this album of black capitalism, in many ways, is conservatism wrapped up in hip-hop. That's all it is. It's Jay-Z basically telling you the same stuff that Donald Trump is telling you. Now, the great irony, hold up, let's back up. Donald Trump's daddy got rich off of redlining and the like in New York. His business failed. The FHA undergirded the Trump business, Trump's father's business. And he set up like 6,000 properties in New York from FHA money. And we sitting up here talking about, I couldn't have bought a property in Dumbo if it was Dumbo. Come on, dude. They giving that away. I want to move into now is reason number 2, which is Jay-Z fails on like black issues. And if we go back, what you see is, and I may cut in a video, I may not, Jay-Z basically responding to Harry Belafonte. You know, Harry Belafonte called him and Beyonce out for their lack of charitable efforts and lack of really dealing at a granular level with black struggle. And Jay-Z's initial response was, my presence is my charity. Basically saying he and Obama give black people hope, and ain't that enough? And this is like the conundrum when you see this idea of growth, because when you look at the words in these songs, there ain't no growth. It's just turning the table another way. And I think for a lot of people that's hard to digest because they themselves think the same way. What do I mean? So when you hear somebody in a song tell black people who are, according to, just like I showed before, where the middle family isn't worth $1,700, bottom half isn't worth $1, what you see is that this individual is essentially using art and millions of dollars and his own social position to somehow tell people that if you do the same stuff I did, I don't know if it's dope selling or rapping, you too can be a millionaire. And none of it's true. you know, I want to give you guys a book to possibly read, which is Capital in the 21st Century by Thomas Piketty. And it shows that wealth is calcifying amongst the rich like we've never seen before. There aren't these new millionaires being created. And so for Jay-Z to tell a bunch of black people who aren't even, forget millionaires, thousandaires, what you see is to tell them to not focus on black politics, but focus on individual kind of beneficial like projects is a problem. It's a problem. But if you don't know the data, you don't know it's a problem. And I gave you the data. So, you know, his presence is not enough to be cherished. You know, we need more. We needed you. You know, I'll give you an example. Byron Allen, go look him up. I'll pull up a little article. He's suing Comcast and Charter for cable issues. But at one point, we were talking a lot. And we did a piece together called The 8 Solutions to Make America Great Again. And it was 8 things Obama could do for black people. I'm going to pull that up right now. And Byron, we wrote that together. And I got it published at Huffington Post. But Byron gave that to Obama. These are the kind of things, if you're going to have Obama on the phone, we need you to be asking Obama for things for black people as a race and be demanding that he actually steps up for black people. But you didn't, because you didn't know what to ask, and I don't know if you cared to ask. So we come to and many people would then probably say, how do you know that? Well, we can look at track records. So let's look at one of those track records, which is Jay-Z with this Brooklyn Nets. You know, this was basically a step outside of the lane where Jay-Z was going to use all his hip-hop branding to sell the Brooklyn community on this new Nets stadium and this new Nets team. And he brought all this fervor and energy to the community that he owned the Nets and that he's going to bring jobs. And in the end, he didn't bring nothing. And he didn't own nothing. Jay-Z owned less than 1% of the team. That's what came out. Very few, if any, jobs were created. This is a small section from an article called Jay-Z's Hip Hop of Distraction from Salon.com. Go check it out. While Brooklyn's born Carter owns a tiny fraction of the team, he becomes the face of the franchise, the Teflon-coated superstar employed by his partners to distract attention from the hairball politics, sweetheart deals, and private profits behind the arena and the rest of the 16 Tower project. So we have to understand what this statement is saying. It's saying that a person that you allow into your home through this music and into your mind then turns around and does these kind of things to your community. And I think that to now talk about growth without talking about what you're going to do to repair what you broke for Jay-Z, for black America to support Jay-Z that way, it's a problem. He failed that Brooklyn community and he failed black America. I don't want to hear about no small scale stuff of giving somebody $8,000 to see their family on Father's Day. I want to hear about black politics that moves the dial. And I don't want to hear it from no super capitalist, because that's what this is sounding like. This is sounding like super capitalist talk. And we've seen it over and over from Jay-Z. When we look over at Tidal, I mean, the whole staff almost was white. Pull up the picture. The whole staff was almost white. I mean, we sit up and we talk about black kids getting STEM classes and learning jobs, and we know that they don't get no chance in Silicon Valley. If he was really about black people, you know, fly out 10 black people to get jobs there. I ain't saying make your whole staff white, even though I feel that should be the case. Should be 50% black. I don't know. Make it happen. Tell Obama make it happen. And then get Obama to fund it. He on the phone, right? Or you just want him on the phone for the barbecue and the pictures. This is the problem. Like, people don't know what they're looking at. They're looking at an empty glass talking about it's full with champagne. You know, there was a great article, you know, the last thing I'm going to say on this section, which is basically saying a small sampling of Jay-Z's history with race in America. There was this great article called Jay-Z's Statements on Race Will Make You Cringe. That's the name of the article. And in it, they kind of go back to a Jay-Z statement or quote during a master class that he had with Oprah, and the statement is just ignorance. And I think for us, it's hard for us to see Jay-Z as ignorant, but he is on a lot of things. And I'm not saying he can't learn some things, but in the space that he's in, the super capitalist space, he's not learning much. And so the quote, just to be fair, I want to read it in generally like its entirety. It'll take like not too long, but let me just read it. I have a very interesting take. This is Jay-Z talking to Oprah during the master class. I have a very interesting take on the cultural impact of hip-hop, and it's a strong one. So I just want to prepare people at home. I think that hip-hop has done more for cultural relations than most cultural icons. And I say Martin Luther King, because of his dream speech, we realized, and President Obama got elected, but the impact of this music didn't only influence kids from urban areas, it influenced people around the world. People listened to this music all around the world and took to this music. Okay. Do you know how disrespectful that is to Harry Belafonte? Do you know how disrespectful that is to Malcolm X? To Medgar Evers? To Emmett Till? Do you know how disrespectful that is to Martin Luther King Jr. to relegate him down to the dream speech? To the black churches, to the lynched black people? Fundamentally, that statement shows why a person that dropped out of high school can't lead us. He has no context for the history of black people in this country. Jay-Z is lost. And so for me, what I feel is that that's hard for, the people who've been following him for years while they go to Harvard. I don't know what's going on. You go to Harvard and then you play that while you drive to work to make you feel inspired. But for me, what I'm seeing is that statement sums up so much of the reason why this album has no legs. To not understand the reality of what civil rights icons, what slave abolitionists and Harriet Tubman, what these people did to put us in a position to even have an inkling of a chance, it's a problem. Now, in addition, what he doesn't understand is that his music is not all that helpful. The Decadent Veil is real, and I'll get into it towards the end shortly. But is it good to tell white America that we have rich people when we don't? To fake like we have money when we don't on rap videos? Is that a healthy addition to the black dialogue? And I'm not relegating hip hop just to that. But I'm saying in so many ways what you see is that it wasn't all good in terms of what was introduced to white America's psyche through hip hop as far as black wealth. The reality is that Jay-Z really needs to step back and maybe stop saying stuff that's woke if he ain't woke. And that's just my view on it. The data is real and he don't have it. I mean, he had one line where he said the Jews got all the property. Well, if you look at the top 5 white families in this country, they're not Jewish. The top 5 white families that own land, they're not Jewish. I did one of the premier pieces on black land ownership. I went and Googled it about 2 years ago. I didn't see nothing. I saw one black farmer who had done a piece. So I just said, let me just blow this out the water. I did a big piece. What I showed is that black America in this country owns 1% of rural land. 1%. I mean, that's where you make the fruits and the vegetables. That's how you get self-reliance. All this stuff that we talk about like we have way more than 1% and we can farm. Nonetheless, white America owns 98% of the rural land worth 99% of the money. And that's not just Jewish. That's not what are you talking about? You can't say stuff that is inaccurate and then everybody give you credit like it's accurate. They don't own all the property. And there's a long reason behind their advantage, such as getting reparations from Germany, which we have not gotten. To then tell black people or make black people feel like somehow they are messing up, they're not making the right decisions with their lives, or somehow they're not using money to buy property. It's all inaccurate. And then in addition to try to twist credit Like, it's been this panacea of answer that we've misused. It's just ignorant as well. And I'll tell you. And so, like, you know, what you see is that in so many instances, the context of Jay-Z is better than the man and the actual lyrics. The context of the black superhero that came up, pulled himself up by his bootstraps in the ghetto, despite all of the disenfranchisement, and became worth $500 million is better than the man. Tidal was not sold to Sprint, in my view, because it was a good deal. It was a fire sale. He had failed as a businessman. And so, like, you see that with the Kanye West fallout, where he hasn't paid Kanye his money. Whether we know whether Kanye is right or Jay-Z is right, we just know there is a fallout. Whether we see that he had to sell to Sprint and had to do this album of 10 songs that sounds like he put it together real fast at 50. I mean, I don't know too many 50-year-olds that want to do a rap album. So when we see all those things, we have to add it up and ask ourselves, why are we following somebody who might be inauthentic? And that moves me into point number 3, which is Jay-Z is inauthentic, and he didn't really sell dope like that. So, you know, I said earlier I did the documentary Freeway Cracking the System on Rick Ross, on Black Wealth, on a number of issues. And one of the things that came out to, like, talking to Rick is a strong, like, understanding that Jay-Z was at best a small-scale dope salesman for a short period of time. So now he's talking about selling dope to black people at a high scale in the most grandiose way possible, and it's lacking all of the consequential pieces that made the dope man the dope man. All the vulnerability, all of the fear of being kidnapped and thrown in a potato sack, all of the vulnerability of always being chased. There's no rinsing the dope money off. It stays dirty and they can come get you at any time, looking over your shoulder. So don't tell a generation of black people that have no access to this reality of this life that you know this life when you don't know this life. That's the problem. You know, Freeway Rick, he had a motel, a cleaner, a tire shop, and the way it was really set up, to my understanding, you know, is they can come get you like years later. And so, like, this idea that we could rinse like dirty money off the same way white people could, it's not true. It's some mafia tail stuff. They continuously always change the rules when it comes to black people. I mean, when you look at Black Wall Street, when you look at the reality of the taking of lands throughout the South, when you look at that, I mean, to think that, you know, one of the problems with dope money is that you can't use it legally in the same way, particularly as a black person, but generally, because you can't go to the police, you can't sue legally in court, so you just hoping everybody does right by you in a country where nobody does right by you. So, you know, in this story of OJ, this concept of why the black men kill themselves in the neighborhood, they live in that neighborhood. Stop blaming them. The larger question is why there are no jobs in that neighborhood, why there are no opportunities in that neighborhood, why is it that neighborhood is full of payday loans and liquor stores? That's the question. And it don't make it no better if the liquor store is owned by a black person. So, you know, what I kind of wanted just to come back to is this is what you get when somebody who never was really like into dope like that is talking about dope. You just get this Rick Ross, the rapper, kind of like syndrome where you kind of just talk about dope like it was the greatest thing in the world, when actually it was a means to an end. It wasn't a glamorous job in '82. But by the time we get to 2010, 2011, Jay-Z has made it into like a illustrious career akin to like the greatest CEOs in the world. And it's just not the case, and it's never been the case. And I think that it's a travesty that Black America doesn't know that. Go check out Freeway Cracking the System, you know, and I'm just here to say on point 3 that he's just inauthentic. And that brings me to the last point, which is point 4. There's a decadent veil of black celebrity that covers Black America. I'm going to share a little section and pull up the article. But essentially, it's an ode to Du Bois and his veil, but it's a little different. You know, it's not a veil of double consciousness. This is an actual veil where white America, white capital largely knows that black America has systemic issues that both are economically necessary, whether it be mass incarceration, you know, let's lay out a little data. One of the highest incarceration rates we've ever seen in the first world, or in the modern world, is during apartheid in South Africa. That's 800 per 100,000. That's about like 1%. A normal rate is like 100 per 100,000, which is 0.1%. Black males in this country are at nearly 10,000 per 100,000. Working age black males between the ages of 19 and 40. The ones that are out, according to the census, are unemployed at a rate of 40 to 45% in most major cities across the country. Yet, when you go to the cover of yahoo.com, all you see are young black millionaires, when just by the data, like I told you before, they hardly exist. Black wealth in this country hardly exists, but somehow, because of black celebrity, everybody believes that it's abundantly available. The Decadent Veil is real. Jay-Z is a large part of that Decadent Veil and makes a killing off of keeping you unaware that it exists. He just told you my presence is my charity, and my job is to sell you hope. Not jobs, not opportunity. You know, he got the line, what's better than 1 billionaire, 2 billionaires? What's better than 2 billionaires though? A working middle class for black America. But he don't know that and don't care to know that. You sitting up here rooting for him and Puffy, I'm rooting for you. And so, you know, I want to share a little section of the Decadent Veil and kind of close out. The Decadent Veil looks at black Americans through a lens of group theory and seeks to explain an illusion that has taken form over a 30-year span of financial deregulation and newfound access to unsecured credit. The veil is trimmed with million-dollar sports contracts, Rock Nation tour deals, and designer labels made for heads of state. As black celebrity invited us into their homes through shows like MTV Cribs, we forgot the condition of overall African-American financial affairs. Despite a large section of the 14 million black households drowning in poverty and debt, the stories of a few are told as if they represent those of millions, not thousands. It is this new veil of economics that has allowed a broad swath of America to become not just desensitized to black poverty, but also hypnotized by black celebrity. So I just wanted to give you those 4 reasons that Jay-Z and 444 fail when it comes to black America and black wealth. You know, I'm just saying that Jay-Z basically is saying, I'm not black, I'm just Jay. Tune in and subscribe. Tone Talks on YouTube. Go to tonetalks.org to donate. Share this. Let's get the dialogue going.
Nigga. I like that one. Data matters. Light nigga, dark nigga, faux nigga, real nigga, rich nigga, poor nigga, Kobe nigga, Kunta nigga, still nigga, still nigga. Jay be like, I'm not black, I'm just Jay. Okay.